Chosen one, pause for a moment and breathe before you dismiss this as coincidence. This message is not appearing randomly in your life, and it is not meant for everyone. You were targeted, intentionally, through your image, your presence, your essence. Someone believed that by touching what represents you, they could touch you. They were wrong. What was sent toward you carried malice, envy, and desperation, yet it never reached its destination in the way it was intended to. Instead, something ended, something collapsed, and it was not you. You may have felt strange shifts recently, sudden exhaustion followed by clarity, a heaviness lifting without explanation, moments where you sensed you were being watched, judged, or quietly resented. These were not accidents. When a photo is used with ill intent, it becomes a doorway. But not every doorway opens the same way. Some reflect, some return, and some close violently on the one who tried to pass through. This message is not here to scare you. It is here to confirm what you already suspected deep inside. You are protected in ways others are not. That protection does not come from arrogance or luck, but from alignment. When energy meets a boundary it cannot cross, it implodes inward. The sender never anticipates that moment because they assume you are unaware, unguarded, and ordinary. You are not. Before you continue, take a deliberate action, like this video, and comment the words, "I claim my protection." Do not rush it. Intention matters. This is not superstition, it is consent. By doing so, you acknowledge awareness, and awareness seals doors that were never meant to be open. What follows will explain why the attempt failed, what ended instead, and why you're being asked to remain calm rather than afraid. Listen carefully. Not everything that looks like an attack is meant to destroy you. Some things expose themselves by failing. Some things reveal the truth by collapsing under their own weight. And some messages, like this one, arrive only after the danger has already passed, to make sure you understand what you survived. You are not being asked to fight, retaliate, or prove anything. Your role right now is observation and composure. Power that survives does not announce itself. It stabilizes, it watches, and it learns. The reason this resonates is because on some level, you already knew the outcome favored you. You felt it when fear failed to take hold. You felt it when anxiety could not root itself. That quiet knowing is not imagination. It is confirmation. Stay present, stay grounded, and let the rest unfold without interference. Everything in this message is timed. You are seeing it now because distance has already been created between you and what was meant to harm you. Distance is safety, distance is clarity, and clarity is the signal that you are no longer inside the blast radius of someone else's intentions. This is the moment where confusion ends and understanding quietly begins. Silence. 1. The curse was real. They knew exactly what they were doing when they chose a photo instead of confronting you directly. A photo carries more than an image. It carries timing, memory, intention, and access. It freezes a moment of you and presents it as something that can be held, studied, and projected onto. That is why people who operate through resentment prefer distance. They believe separation gives them control. They believe working behind the scenes protects them from consequence. And in many cases, it does. Just not when the target is someone like you. The curse was real. That truth matters, because dismissing it as imagination would strip you of context. What was sent toward you was deliberate, focused, and emotionally charged. It was built from comparison, frustration, and a sense of injustice the sender refused to process internally. Instead of doing their own work, they externalized their collapse and tried to place it onto you. This is how these things begin. Not with power, but with weakness disguised as confidence. You may wonder how something like this even starts. It often begins long before the act itself. Subtle observation, quiet envy, watching you move forward while they feel stagnant. They replay your image not because they admire you, but because your existence reminds them of what they cannot access within themselves. Over time, admiration curdles into resentment, and resentment seeks an outlet. The photo becomes a stand-in, a symbolic handle they believe gives them leverage. If you look back, there may have been signs. Unexplained emotional dips that didn't belong to you. Sudden thoughts that felt intrusive, foreign, or oddly specific. Physical fatigue without a clear cause. Dreams that repeated themes of being watched, followed, or evaluated. These are common markers when someone tries to project their inner chaos outward. The body often senses intrusion before the mind accepts it. What they didn't understand is that not all energy sticks. Not all images are open portals. Some people carry an inherent resistance not because they are perfect, but because they are self-contained. Your sense of self is not porous. You do not leak identity. That makes you difficult to penetrate. The curse depended on you being fragmented, insecure, or unaware. It required you to internalize what was never yours. That requirement was its first failure. There is also a misconception that curses are dramatic, ritual, heavy acts, filled with theatrics. Most are not. Most are quiet, emotionally fueled intentions repeated with focus. The danger doesn't come from ceremony. It comes from obsession, and obsession, when aimed at someone grounded, creates feedback. Energy looks for an entry point. When it can't find one, it circles back. This is where things begin to shift. The moment the intent left them and failed to attach to you, it didn't disappear. Energy doesn't vanish. It redirects. It seeks the nearest compatible host. In this case, the only place left was the sender themselves. But that realization comes later. At first, all you noticed was relief. A strange calm after tension, a sense that something had passed you by. Understanding that the curse was real does not mean you are vulnerable. It means you are informed. Awareness is not fear. It is clarity. You are not required to confront, expose, or defend yourself. The event has already moved beyond you. Your role in this story is not as a victim or a warrior, but as a fixed point, someone whose stability caused instability elsewhere. This section matters because it reframes what happened. You were not lucky. You were not spared by chance. You were incompatible with what was sent. That incompatibility is not accidental. It is built over time through self-knowledge, boundaries, and an unwillingness to carry what does not belong to you. Whatever they attempted required your participation to succeed. They never got it. 2. The curse failed. The moment the intention left them, something unexpected happened. It did not travel cleanly. It did not land where it was aimed. There was a hesitation in the energy, a pause that should never occur if a projection is compatible with its target. That pause was the first sign of failure. What was sent toward you encountered resistance, not forceful resistance, not aggression, but refusal. A closed system does not argue with intrusion. It simply does not receive it. They expected reaction, confusion, weakness, a subtle unraveling they could feel from afar. Instead, there was silence. Silence is devastating to someone who relies on feedback to feel powerful. When nothing echoed back, the intent lost direction. It began to destabilize. This is the part most people never talk about. When something is sent with malice and finds no home, it becomes volatile. Directionless energy does not dissolve peacefully. It searches. You may have noticed this phase without understanding it. A brief sense of pressure that vanished quickly, a fleeting discomfort followed by unusual clarity. The body often registers a failed intrusion as a passing disturbance, like a wave that breaks before reaching shore. You didn't need to fight it. You didn't need to know its origin. Your system rejected it automatically. For the sender, however, the experience was different. What they felt was confusion first, a sense that something hadn't worked, followed by irritation. Obsession intensifies when control slips. They may have repeated the intention, replayed the image, pushed harder. Each repetition made the rebound stronger. What they didn't realize was that persistence does not create power when the foundation is flawed. It accelerates collapse. The failure of the curse was not dramatic or immediate. It unfolded quietly. The energy bent inward instead of outward. Thoughts turned intrusive. Emotional instability increased. Sleep became disrupted. When someone sends out what they cannot contain, and it returns amplified, it looks like bad luck from the outside. From the inside, it feels like losing coherence. Their focus fractured, their sense of control eroded. This is why you are not meant to feel afraid now. The threat did not escalate. It reversed. The danger did not approach. It retreated. What you experienced as relief was the exact moment the trajectory changed. You were no longer part of the equation. The attempt failed because it required you to be open, uncertain, or energetically available. You were none of those things. Failure in this context does not mean nothing happened. It means the outcome deviated completely from the intention. The sender aimed to weaken you. Instead, they destabilized themselves. They sought leverage. Instead, they triggered exposure. When energy turns inward under pressure, it magnifies whatever is already unresolved. That is not punishment. That is consequence. You are not responsible for what followed. You did not cause it by existing, by succeeding, or by being seen. You simply did not absorb what was never yours. That refusal was enough. The universe does not require retaliation when alignment is present. It requires stillness. Stillness allows misdirected force to reveal its origin. This section is important because it marks the turning point. The story stops being about an attack and starts being about a reversal. Whatever fear might have existed no longer applies. You are past the moment of vulnerability. The failed curse is already behind you. What remains is understanding, not so you can dwell on it, but so you don't misinterpret silence as danger. Silence, in this case, is the sound of something no longer having access to you. 3. There was a death, but it wasn't yours. When the phrase, "there's a dead body," appears in this message, it is meant to unsettle you just enough to pay attention. Death, in this context, is not always physical, and it is not always visible, but it is always final. Something ended when the intent failed to reach you. Something irreversible occurred the moment the energy turned back on its source. What died was the version of control the sender believed they had. What collapsed was the structure they used to feel powerful, hidden and untouchable. In spiritual and psychological warfare, death often arrives as disintegration. An identity can die. A narrative can die. A sense of superiority can die. When someone builds their self-worth around dominance over others, especially unseen dominance, the failure of that control is catastrophic. It doesn't bruise the ego, it erases the fantasy. And without that fantasy, they are forced to confront what remains. That confrontation is what most people cannot survive intact. You may never know exactly what form this death took, and that is intentional. The message is not asking you to investigate, confirm, or seek proof. In fact, clarity would weaken the lesson. Ambiguity protects you. It keeps you from being emotionally entangled in consequences that are not yours to carry. The important truth is not what ended, but where it ended. It did not end in your life. It did not attach to your path. It did not leave residue in your system. When energy rebounds at that magnitude, it targets the weakest internal structure. Sometimes it manifests as the collapse of relationships, sometimes as sudden exposure, loss, or isolation, sometimes as mental unraveling that feels like being hunted by one's own thoughts. This is why people who attempt to control others through hidden means often fear silence afterward. Silence is where the consequences speak the loudest. You may have sensed a shift around the same time. Not fear, but distance. A detachment that arrived without effort. As if something that once hovered near you suddenly vanished. That absence is meaningful. Absence after pressure is resolution. It is the sign that a cycle has completed itself without your involvement. It is important to understand that you did not win in a traditional sense. There was no battle. There was no exchange. There was no escalation. That is precisely why the outcome was so severe for the other side. Power struggles require two participants. You declined without knowing you were being invited. That refusal stripped the situation of oxygen. The dead body is the aftermath of obsession meeting immunity. It is the residue left when intent collides with alignment. It is not a threat to you, and it is not a warning meant to provoke fear. It is confirmation that some actions cannot be undone, and some energies cannot be recalled once released. What you are hearing now is not danger approaching, but danger already resolved. This section exists to sever curiosity. Curiosity is the only thing that could reconnect you to what is finished. You are not meant to look back, check signs, or search for confirmation in the external world. Closure does not always come with explanation. Sometimes it comes as peace that doesn't need justification. What matters is this: whatever died, did so because it could not survive in your proximity. That is not something to celebrate loudly or mourn quietly. It simply is. And the fact that you are still standing, steady and aware, is the only evidence you ever needed that the outcome was never meant to touch you. 4. Why you survived. Survival in this context has nothing to do with endurance and everything to do with incompatibility. You did not withstand the attack through effort or strength. You survived because what was sent could not recognize you as a viable host. There are people who move through the world carrying open circuits, constantly absorbing the emotional debris of others. You are not one of them. Your system is self-referencing. It returns foreign energy to sender without amplification, without drama. This is often mistaken for luck or spiritual favoritism, but it is neither. It is alignment. Alignment is what happens when your inner narrative matches your outward behavior. There are no fractures for intrusion to exploit. You know who you are, even when you are uncertain. That consistency creates a boundary more effective than any ritual or defense. Nothing attaches where there is no confusion. Another reason you survived is timing. Awareness changes outcomes. Even if you did not consciously know someone was focusing on you, your intuition registered the shift. Intuition is not mystical. It is pattern recognition operating below language. The moment something felt off, you adjusted without panic. You rested. You withdrew. You became quieter. Those micro-adjustments closed doors before you ever needed to name them. There is also the matter of lineage. Some people inherit resilience through experience, through having been tested earlier in life. Repeated challenges force the development of discernment. You learned, perhaps painfully, what does not belong to you. You learned when to disengage, when to remain silent, when to stop explaining yourself. Those lessons are not abstract. They form a structure that hostile intent cannot pass through. You survived because you do not chase validation. People who curse, project, or manipulate rely on the target needing approval, needing answers, needing to be seen a certain way. You have already outgrown that hunger. When there is nothing to hook into, the line goes slack. The sender pulled, and nothing came with it. It is important to understand that survival does not always feel dramatic. Often it feels anticlimactic. You expected chaos and received calm. You expected confrontation and received distance. That contrast can be disorienting if you believe survival must be loud to be real. In truth, the most decisive victories are quiet because they do not require witnesses. This is why fear never fully took hold in you. Fear needs uncertainty to grow. Your nervous system recognized that whatever was happening did not belong to your future. You sensed that the trajectory had already diverged. That sensing is not denial. It is clarity arriving before explanation. You are also protected because you do not retaliate impulsively. Retaliation binds energy. Restraint releases it. By not reacting, not speculating, not obsessing, You allowed the situation to complete itself elsewhere. That is not passivity. That is mastery. This section exists to ground you in reality rather than mythology. You are not invincible, and you do not need to be. You are simply coherent. Coherence is rare. It is built through honesty, self-observation, and the willingness to let things end without forcing closure. That is why you are here, reading this, unaffected while something else unraveled out of view. Survival, in your case, was not a miracle. It was the natural outcome of being whole. 5. Who sent it? Understanding who sent the curse is less about uncovering a name and more about recognizing a pattern. The sender is not always someone obvious, nor is it always a person you would suspect. They operate from hidden envy, quiet obsession, or a compulsion to control what they cannot create. Their identity is less important than the archetype they embody, the one who resents your freedom because they cannot replicate it. This type of individual observes from a distance. They collect details, watch patterns, and wait for what they believe is the perfect moment to act. Photos, images, and glimpses of your life become tools in their hands, instruments to manipulate reality they cannot command directly. They think targeting what represents you will bend circumstances in their favor. They are meticulous but short-sighted, precise but fundamentally unaware of their limitations. Often they resemble mirrors of your strengths. They notice what you do well, what draws attention, what others admire, and they internalize it as a deficiency within themselves. The more they compare, the more obsession grows. Envy becomes fixation. Where you express yourself freely, they measure. Where you act with intention, they react with compulsion. Their desire is never to improve themselves. It is to invert your position, to see your energy destabilized so they can feel balance restored in their perception of the world. You may find it tempting to imagine motives, jealousy, revenge, or curiosity. While these are accurate, they are surface level. The deeper motive is projection, a need to externalize their inadequacy. When someone cannot reconcile their own dissatisfaction, they attempt to project it outward onto someone else's life. And when that projection meets resistance, it backfires. That is why the curse failed in your case, and why the outcome was catastrophic for them instead. Notice that the sender does not need to be nearby. Physical distance is irrelevant when energy is the medium. They can operate through screens, images, and messages because intent travels faster than bodies. They calculate, observe, and attempt manipulation from anywhere in the world. That is why so many attacks of this nature feel invisible at first. The threat is unseen, but the effect is real, until it meets someone aligned and self-contained. Another critical point is that the sender often underestimates the target. They assume vulnerability, distraction, or ignorance. They do not anticipate the refusal to internalize their energy. That miscalculation is the turning point, the moment when failure becomes inevitable. The more they try to maintain control, the more the energy rebounds, exposing cracks they never intended to reveal. In this way, their obsession accelerates their undoing. Finally, it is essential to understand that the sender's identity is irrelevant to your path. Knowing who they are may satisfy curiosity but does nothing to enhance protection. The lesson is in pattern recognition. You now see how envy, obsession, and projection manifest, and you can detect them in subtle forms before they escalate. Your clarity is your safeguard. Recognition prevents influence. Awareness maintains boundaries. This section exists to shift your focus from speculation to understanding. The danger is not in the person who sent it, but in the energy they attempted to leverage. By comprehending the archetype and its mechanisms, you reclaim perspective. You no longer react blindly. You observe deliberately. The curse is no longer a threat because you now know its source, its method, and its inevitable limitations. You have insight where they have only intent. That is why they failed, and that is why you remain untouched. 6. The aftermath they're facing now. Once the intent failed to attach to you, the consequences began to unfold in the sender's life. Energy that is misdirected does not simply vanish. It returns to its origin, amplified and unstable. What they thought would empower or manipulate you instead destabilized them. The carefully constructed sense of control they relied upon began to crack, imperceptibly at first, then increasingly obvious in their thoughts, emotions, and actions. Their confidence eroded. Every step they took felt heavier. Decisions that once seemed effortless became riddled with doubt. Situations that previously would have been manageable now appeared insurmountable. Their mental clarity fragmented under pressure they did not understand. This is the paradox of projection. The more you try to externalize your unresolved energy, the more it destabilizes the self if it fails to land elsewhere. Emotionally, the aftermath is chaotic. Obsession intensifies, yet it cannot find a target. Their mind cycles repeatedly through what was intended, what failed, and why. Sleep becomes restless, plagued with dreams that mirror their anxiety and obsession. In waking hours, every interaction seems sharper, more hostile, more demanding than necessary. They may lash out or retreat, but neither choice restores stability. The instability is internal, and no external act can correct it. Some may experience social fallout. Relationships formed around convenience, manipulation, or power may fracture as the energy rebound exposes hidden truths. Allies may withdraw when they sense tension or inconsistency. Influence weakens. The image of competence and control they cultivated crumbles quietly, piece by piece. Their environment reflects the internal imbalance, creating circumstances that feel like misfortune, but are in reality the direct consequence of misapplied energy. Financial, professional, or creative ventures may encounter sudden obstacles. Projects stall, opportunities slip away. Situations that seemed manageable in theory now encounter repeated complications. The effort they pour into regaining momentum often meets resistance precisely because the energy driving them is unstable. When you attempt to manipulate the world while carrying misdirected force, the world itself resists you. Psychologically, the experience is disorienting. They may sense they are losing ground without understanding why. Paranoia may grow. Irritability may spike. The feeling of being trapped inside one's own thoughts is intense because the energy they attempted to project outward is now trapped inward. The very attempt to harm you became a mirror, reflecting weakness, obsession, and imbalance back at the sender. This aftermath is not revenge. It is not an external punishment. It is consequence. Actions have results, and when energy is misused, it finds a way to correct itself. In this case, the correction took place far from you, in the life of the person who miscalculated. You are not required to intervene, celebrate, or even notice. What happened is already complete. The key lesson here is awareness. Observing the aftermath from a distance teaches you that projection, obsession, and envy are self-contained dangers. They do not need your participation to create chaos for the person sending them. You are not the cause, nor are you the solution. Your role is clarity, composure, and continued alignment with your own path. The energy that returned to them is their responsibility, and it will play out without your interference. That is the power of immunity. This section exists to reassure and separate you from the fallout. While they experience disarray, you continue unaffected, grounded in your reality. Their chaos is not your burden. Their unraveling is proof that alignment matters more than intent. You do not need to act, to intervene, or to justify your existence. You only need to maintain awareness, knowing that what they sent to harm you has already undone them instead. 7. What you do next. Now that the cycle has closed, your responsibility is not action, but integration. Nothing more is required of you than awareness and restraint. When something attempts to attach to you and fails, the natural instinct is to look back, to confirm, to understand every detail. Resist that urge. Looking back reopens doors that closed on their own. Your power lies in continuing forward without dragging unfinished energy into your present. What you do next is maintain stillness. Stillness does not mean inaction. It means clarity without reaction. You do not need to announce boundaries or defend yourself. Boundaries that need to be explained are already compromised. Your silence is not avoidance. It is containment. It ensures that nothing from this event gains relevance or influence over your future decisions. Remain observant, but not suspicious. Hypervigilance creates fractures where none exist. Trust the stability you already demonstrated. If something feels off in the future, you will recognize it quickly, just as you did before. That recognition will come quietly, without panic. Awareness has already proven itself effective. You do not need new strategies or protections. The ones you carry are intrinsic. Another important step is release. Release does not require forgiveness or understanding. It requires neutrality. Let the story become information rather than identity. You are not defined by being targeted, surviving, or remaining untouched. Those are events, not labels. The moment you turn them into identity, you give them weight. Weight creates gravity, and gravity pulls things back toward you. Neutrality lets them drift away permanently. Continue cultivating what grounds you. Routine, rest, honest expression, and selective connection keep your system coherent. Coherence is your greatest safeguard. Avoid the temptation to analyze others excessively. Curiosity about their outcome is natural, but it is also unnecessary. The resolution has already occurred. Curiosity would only tie your attention to something that no longer has relevance. If anything, this experience clarifies your discernment. You may notice a heightened sensitivity to subtle dynamics, to people who observe too closely or operate indirectly. Use that sensitivity not to judge, but to choose distance when needed. Distance is not rejection, it is self-respect. You are allowed to move without explaining your choices. Finally, understand this. Nothing about this experience requires you to harden yourself. Do not confuse protection with closure of the heart. You do not need to become guarded or suspicious to remain safe. Your openness, when paired with discernment, is not a weakness. It is part of what makes you incompatible with hostile intent. You can remain open without being available. This section closes the narrative because there is nothing left unresolved. The attempt is over. The consequence has landed elsewhere. Your role now is to live normally, fully, and without rehearsal of what already passed. That is the final boundary. Life does not pause for threats that never reached you. It continues. And so should you, grounded, aware, and untouched by what was never meant to stay.